all over here. All right?
I'm going to give you this microphone.
All right.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Don't let me trip you. Welcome, everybody. Happy Saturday. This is the pregame. Just enjoy. You don't have to record the whole thing.
Remember it.
Yeah, no, if your phones are on, maybe just fine. Turn them on silent.
I'll stick to still shots.
Still shots? Okay, that'd be fine. But no flash, or I will come flashing at you. Yes, Tom Shillue is one of my great friends. We met 12 years ago, I think. And it's been such a fun thing to watch his wonderful wife and him raise two wonderful girls. I love the girls. Are you recording this too? Ma'am. No. Why are you holding your phone like that? No, please just enjoy. I don't mind if you take a picture or whatever, but we honestly, let's just enjoy ourselves here. Have a moment where we can all connect, which is, I think, what we're all needing as well. As Kelly said, it's been a few heavy weeks, but we are in for it because that's the times that we're living in. And what I think I've learned from Tom is that being principled and strong and patriotic is a great way to live, and that there is freedom when you have those kinds of guidelines in your life. And he and Denise, his wife, have raised these girls that I love, and they're in the back. Wave to Denise and the girls. You'll hear a lot about them because Tom does all these shows. Anybody go to the comedy show last night at Uncle Vinny's?
All right.
Sold out. Oh, you've been there. Okay, well, it was really great. You're going to hear a little bit of that today. I thought I would just introduce him and ask him a few questions. Then he will give you a little bit. He loves to take questions. That's what he and Gutfeld do. Did anybody go to the Gutfeld event with him in Atlantic City? Okay. You guys have so much to look forward to because there's all these events coming up. Let me start off by this. Tom, tell them a little bit about where you grew up, how you grew up.
I grew up in Norwood, Massachusetts. Any Massachusetts people here? All right. This is fantastic. This guy is so MAGA, and you know, Massachusetts is blue. No wonder you left. That's unbelievable. But I was born in '66, so I always say in the book, and it is kind of tongue-in-cheek, because we always believe that we grew up in the greatest era in America. But I felt I got the sweet spot between the 1950s and the 1970s. We had the discipline of the 1950s, but we had the kind of, you know, my mom brought a lot of the 70s vibe. You know, she was really kind of like a modern homemaker, and you know, today they do everything online, but she subscribed to all the newsletters, and she was always doing her own knitting, and she was a painter and an artist. So we had a lot of creativity in our home, but we also had that rigor of a strict Catholic upbringing, and I feel like I got the best of both worlds that way. And you know, I was scared of my dad, of course. That's where Mean Dads came from. I was originally going to call the book Mean Dads and Cheap Moms. You get it, right? How many people had a cheap mom? Thrifty, right? She had to stretch dad's paycheck. And how many people were afraid of their dads? Yeah. See, that's what I always say. We all had. My dad was like Darth Vader with a Boston accent. Get in the car. He would say, he'd wake us up. Get in the car. And I know, with all the hands, we all had Darth Vader dads, right? That's why our generation, we're so attached to Star Wars. It really resonates for us. You know, that famous scene, Luke, I am your father. Kids like me were sitting in the back of the theater. That makes sense. Yeah. I've seen that before. But yes, it was a great time to grow up. And when I say mean dads, you guys get it. I think there's a certain generation that understands the tongue-in-cheek nature of it. Because I say somewhere in the book, it's not about, young people have said, that is so sad, you're an abused child. And I say, I wasn't abused. We were just scared of that strange man who came home at 5 o'clock every day. But there's that line between mean dads. He wasn't really mean. We loved our dad. We just didn't want to have to run into him. You know, he was that kind of scary. But you appreciate it later on. 40 years later, you say, thanks, Dad.
How do you think your dad would have approached phones and social media? Because a lot of parents, or if you're a grandparent, it's a lot of conversation today.
Yeah, I don't think he would have, he wasn't big on conversation. He was more action. So how would he deal with phones? I think he'd throw it in the Charles River. That was the basic thing. But yeah, I mean, he probably would not allow us to have phones, and we would beg our dad, say, Dad, everyone has a phone. Yeah, not everybody. Go outside, go out in the yard. So we had the yard, and we used to, we did have I remember one Christmas I got a Viewmaster, and we would look at all the wonderful, remember the Viewmaster you'd go through, and they had Disney World, and I said, Dad, when am I going to go to Disney World? He said, never. What do you want to go there for? You got the Viewmaster, look at it. It's in 3D, then go out in the yard.
When did you know what you wanted to do? Or what was your first job, and then how did you end up doing what you're doing now?
Yeah, I had a lot of jobs, and one of my jobs, my first professional jobs out of college was working for my dad. He bought an ice cream store. So he had always worked in computers. He worked for IBM and Honeywell in the early days in the 60s when the computers were those big machines that went, and his office was always the size of this bookstore. It had computer terminals everywhere, and we'd go and visit, and it seemed like the future. It looked like the deck of the Enterprise, But then my dad had perfect timing, just right around the 1980s. He quit the computer business, said there's no future in this. And he bought an ice cream store. He bought a Dairy Queen. And then he ripped the queen down. He didn't want to pay the royalty, so it became the Dairy Barn. The Dairy Barn, but everyone knew it was the Dairy Queen. You can see that roof, But I worked for him managing his ice cream store. So it kind of had it was that my dad was like a real blue collar hero. He wanted to run his own place. He wanted to have a cash business. And so that was his dream. And he said for me, you don't have to go to college. He says, go, be an entrepreneur, open a restaurant, or, do something like that. I ended up going to college. I dropped out and became a performer. That was not really my dad's idea, but I was in the high school show, and I told a few jokes. I got some laughs. You know how addictive that is? You say something, you get a laugh, you want more.
Do you think President Trump feels that way?
Oh, yeah.
I do. Right? Like if you got you to laugh, he's like, oh, let me tell you another one.
You know what? And he's such a late bloomer too to the comedy scene. Now he's a full-fledged stand-up comedian. And it's interesting because he always had the same. He hasn't changed much. If you look back at him making appearances on Oprah and things like that in the 80s, he was always saying the same stuff, but he didn't have that stand-up energy. Now when he started doing those rallies, he started feeling his oats with the stand-up, and now he does full-on roasts. It's amazing. So it was great. It's great to watch him develop. I've watched so many comedians. I came up with guys like Jim Gaffigan and and Louis C.K. and these guys. These are the guys I played the clubs with in the 90s, and now I'm watching President Trump. He's like a fellow comedian. I'm proud of him.
One of the things I always tell young people, actually anybody, the number one human fear that we all share is a fear of public speaking. It's our number one fear. Not drowning, not fire, anything. The number one fear is the fear of public speaking. You share that with every human on the earth. What's your advice to people who have a fear of getting up there? Because I think of the young woman who opened for him last night, Emily Page. She's a teacher, ESL teacher during the week, and then she gets up there and she goes for it. And I'm very impressed by it, but I know how much guts it takes to do it.
Oh, and you said you still get anxiety when you have to do things like this, right? You said?
No, this is fine.
Yeah.
If I have to open for the Joes, I want to die. We do the event over at the Algonquin Theater where I open for Joe DeVito and Joe Mackey, and honestly, the entire week leading up to it, to do 7 minutes in front of a crowd it's as bad as doing Celebrity Jeopardy next to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It's like it really does drain all of my energy, and I'm so worried. But then when I do it, and you're right, the laughs are addictive because I can have great comedic timing, and I will say things that people will be surprised that I would say.
Yeah.
So I have the element of surprise. But what's your advice for people who have a fear of public speaking?
I think the best thing to do is, because most of the comedians I know that started out, we're weirdos. We're just a little bit weird. I mean, Joe Mackey, he's not a regular person, right? So sometimes I think he was ordering a cup of coffee and people were laughing. And he said, maybe I should do this as a profession. And when I first started doing stand-up, I wasn't nervous at all. At all. I would go to open mic nights, I would get up there, and I wasn't funny. I would do 10 minutes and I would get one laugh. 7 minutes in, somebody would laugh. And that would, most people, it would drive them crazy. But I had this, a bit of a screw loose about it, and I would just go home and think, wow, I got one laugh, that was good. Maybe next time I'll get 2. I was a little bit dorky. You know people who are like that, they're kind of dorks, they're not self-conscious. And so that's the way, that helps you out. Later on, when I started it as a profession, and I needed to get gigs out of it, and I needed to impress the booker for Conan O'Brien, all of a sudden the nervousness started to come in, and I didn't like that, because it's not good to perform nervous. So I tried to overcome that in many ways. You know, one of the tricks that I did was, and I still do this to this day, if I have a big gig, it's rare that I'm gonna get out there and get nervous, but say I was doing a taping of a comedy special for, you know, Netflix, HBO, I'd probably be a little nervous because I want everything to go well. So this is something I did before my Comedy Central special. I noticed that when you get nervous, it's like, you know, your heart's beating, you're sweating, you can feel the pulse, and it's like you just worked out. It's the same feeling that you get after you get off the Stairmaster, or, you know, after you run a mile. So I would start practicing my stand-up. I would go for a run. I would run a mile as hard as I could. I'd be out of breath. And then I would just stand alone in my apartment, and I would do my act. I'd say, like, how many people are afraid of their dad? And then I would take a breath and I would do the next line. And I would simulate nervousness because I would get my heart going. And then before I shot my Comedy Central special, I was in a hotel. I stayed in the hotel the night before that we were shooting the special in. And I got on the treadmill. And I got my heart racing, and then I got off the treadmill and I ran the first 5 minutes of my act, because I knew when I walked out there and the lights and the TV cameras were going, my heart was going to start racing. But I was used to doing the act with my heart racing. So that's a nice little trick you can do. If you have to give a speech or a presentation, get on the treadmill for 10 minutes and then try to give the speech. And the thing is, it's not going to, you would think it's going to be annoying to do that, but what you do is it slows you down, because you have to take a breath. And you know what, when you're speaking, a lot of people, when they're nervous, they just talk the whole time. They don't want to leave a pause.
Like
and then when
Emily?
they can, yes, they guys, you don't leave a pause. Guys, you know what, guys, listen, guys, you gotta listen.
Guys.
Yeah, but.
No, wait, this is the best,
Yes.
this is the best. Hold on, you guys.
So, you find out that you can pause, because in normal conversation, you pause, and you can make eye contact with people. And so, in order to, you'll learn that when your heart is racing and you have to catch your breath, instead of speaking through it, you take a breath and then you speak on the breath. And then you take another
I'm
breath.
so glad I asked you
speak
this,
on the
because
breath.
I wasn't planning to, I had no plan.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I asked you that, because that's different advice than I've ever heard before in my life. And I love it, and I'm going to try it next time. Well, actually, I've told the Joes to never call me again. No, I'm kidding. That's not true. The reason I don't have to tell, the Joes don't have to call me again, is because of the success of the Gutfeld Show, of the success of Fox News. And let's just turn to that for just a moment. How long have you known Greg?
I was introduced to Greg in 2009 by, do you know who?
No.
Andrew Breitbart. Andrew
That's
Breitbart.
so interesting.
Yeah.
Because I met Greg around the same time, but then we started working together in 2011. So Greg and I are the only two originals from the 5. This July will be 15 years.
Whoa.
Can you believe that? You guys have been watching
No.
the 5 for
Yeah.
15 years. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about what it's like to have seen the evolution of, we used to go on Red Eye together.
Yes.
And then from Red Eye to the Gutfeld Show was Saturday night. And then you do other hits on Fox. And then you become a regular fixture, not just on the Gutfeld Show, but on television, but on the Road Show.
Yeah.
And one of the things people love the most are your imitations.
Oh.
And you became super famous for one imitation in particular.
Too bad I can't remember what it was. Can't remember what it was.
I didn't even mean to do it. You know why I started doing Joe Biden? I was sick of doing Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff. Remember Adam Schiff? And I was like, ooh, Adam Schiff, ooh. And he had the bug eyes, and Greg said, you got to try Adam Schiff. You got to give me an Adam. So I broke into my wife's makeup container, and I put the rouge on, and the eyeliner, and the eyebrow pencil. Ooh, and Adam Schiff was like this, ooh, yes. Oh, impeachment. I love impeachment. And the funny thing about it is, Adam Schiff doesn't even talk like that. But he looks like he talks like that. He has kind of a boring voice. You know, he'd say, let the meeting come to order. But when I do him, ooh, I like this voice. Because his face looks like that voice. So I'm not really an impressionist. I did stand up for 20 years and I never did impressions. There's guys, yes. There are guys that are so good at it. Guys like Daryl Hammond, they're technicians. They can do the voice and they get it down perfect. And I was never that type of guy. I loved them growing up. I used to love Rich Little, and I would try the impressions like Rich Little. He used to do Nixon and he could do Ford. He had the details down. But I never really considered myself an impressionist. But I was sick of doing Adam Schiff, and I was using all my wife's makeup. And I said, Greg, I'd love to take a shot at Joe Biden. And he said, really? And he kind of couldn't see it in his mind's eye. So I pulled out my phone and I taped it. And the funny thing about it is, most people don't know because they say, how much makeup do you have to use for Joe Biden? I use Snapchat. I use a filter. I opened up. I found a filter that's called Old Man. And the funny thing is, Old Man worked for a while. That was during the 2020, right? So 2019, I was doing Old Man. And then once he was president, and he really started to fade, I had to switch. I had to find a new filter called Elderly Person. And so it just turns your hair white and it gives you some wrinkles. And then from there, you just gotta, the squint in there, and then you just ramble. You just talk. You just, my corn pop was a bad dude, man. I was the only white lifeguard at an all-black pool in Delaware. He'd just say things. They weren't even lies as much as they were just random things that came out of his mouth. Remember the cannibalism? My Uncle Ada guy. Just at a press conference, my Uncle Ada guy. He ate his ears and his eyes and his nose. The whole thing. I'm like, I know that's a lie. And even so, why are you bragging about it?
How did you start doing Gavin Newsom?
Gavin, I couldn't resist because I keep watching Gavin, and he's such a hog, wants to get on TV all the time. He'll do any TV, he'd do Fox News. Like, he wants everyone to watch him. And just the way he moved all the time, he's like a disco king. He's always moving. And so I said, Greg, we got to do Gavin. But I didn't have the hair, so I went out and I bought a wig. And I pulled the wig on, and then I'm doing Gavin as a disco king. And I kind of forced it on the air. I did it like 4 or 5 times.
I love it because it made me laugh. Did you know that his press... So Ben Shapiro did an interview with Gavin the other day, and he asked him, he said, well, your press office put out a statement that said you would abolish ICE. And Gavin goes, oh, no, I'm not for that. Yeah. Well, I don't think it works that way. I worked at a press office, so are you disavowing your press office? And I said, the question I want to ask Gavin is that your press office, this is a true story, your press office called me a moron and a dingbat. Do you agree with that? So I love making fun of Gavin Newsom because I know he'd be like, oh, I would never have said that.
And he changes to whatever audience he's in. Yeah. I remember watching it with Charlie Kirk. He was one of the first guys to have, when he started his podcast, Charlie was one of the first guys he had on. And you would think, if you just watch that one thing, you would think Newsom was MAGA.
You could go with him. Yeah, you're like, he's a reasonable guy.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel bad at all when you make fun of someone?
No, because I don't think I'm that mean. Even with Joe, it was almost like I was being kind to him. Because he would do worse. He was always falling up a flight of stairs on his own.
Oh, wait, tell them the story about riding your bike into the bush.
Oh, yeah. Well, Greg doesn't watch. I did a video, and it was because it was after Joe fell off the bike. But we had already seen him. We'd watched him fall off that bike over and over again on Nantucket. And so I got to do a take on this, but I had to find a unique way to do it. So I was in Westchester County, and I went into the park, and I rode the bike into the bush. And Greg It was all on the show. He doesn't look at the videos before the show. He just lets me put, he puts it on the show because he said, I want to enjoy the videos along with the audience because he wants to make his job interesting. So he called me after the show. He said, hey, that was a good video today. He said, how'd you do that thing where Joe Biden rides into a bush? I said, how do you think I did? I rode my bike into a bush. I'm like Tom Cruise. I do my own stunts. Do you think you have a budget on this show? I don't do CGI, Greg. These videos are free. I shoot them on my phone.
Tell them a little bit about, my last question for you before I turn it over to you and let you, I'll ask him a few questions before he takes a moment to sign your books. Tell them about the culture of Fox News and what it's like to be there. I will say that I've been there since '09. I've never been happier than I am now, and I've always been happy there. But the culture of our team is, we are so tight knit. We are, it's like, if you remember Red Rover, like, we have the best team. Like, send whoever is coming over, and like, we are going to win. Kate, my assistant, the other day on Monday, she's, we get there very early at 7, and she goes, I don't know why people don't like Mondays. I love Mondays. I love coming to work because all my friends are here. And it really is a very, very special, unique place. You've seen other television shows and how they operate. The Gutfeld show is very lean. The Five is the least expensive show to produce. We don't go anywhere. We sit there at the table that they bought on Amazon. And I was like, sometimes we'll say, could we have a new table? And no, I'm like, oh. Because people get used to the table, and they like us there. And the great thing is, we're about to celebrate the 30th year anniversary of Fox News. And I'm like, it just keeps getting better. And I'll leave you with that answer. I'll give this back to you, and I'll go to the back of the room.
Thank you, Dana Perino. This is why I'm here today. Dana set this whole thing up. Yes, part of the thing I think about working at Fox that is great is most of us never expected to be there. I remember Dana telling me she came in and she thought, well, I'm not a TV person, but I'll do this for a while. And you think it's gonna be gone the next day. When they created the Five, it was right after Glenn Beck was there at 5 o'clock? Yeah. Well, Glenn Beck was gone, so they had to do something. So they threw the Five together, and Greg thought, oh, this is going to last a couple of months. It's just a replacement show. And so he didn't expect that to be lasting. Also, when he did Red Eye, he thought, no way, the kind of TV show that I'm planning on doing, I'm definitely going to get fired. That was his idea. So they did Red Eye. It was on in the middle of the night, and he was thinking, if the executives ever wake up and watch this show, they're definitely going to pull it off the air. And that was the attitude he had, but that's what worked. He created the relationship with the people who are up at 3 a.m. He said this is a great show for like third shifters and ne'er-do-wells and breastfeeding moms. But the people had a great attachment to the show. And then some people who worked like the overnight shift and they were up late, I would be a guest on the show. And I was been trying to break into show business for years. I used to do Comedy Central, I did Conan O'Brien, I did all the different late night shows, and I couldn't get my career going. It seemed like I was doing a lot of stuff on TV. I was on The Daily Show for 3 years, over, first with Craig Kilborn and then The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. And it was helping my career, but it wasn't like I was getting recognized. But then as a guest on Red Eye, just making appearances around the panel, a cop would see me and say, hey, Red Eye guy, And so people were starting to, I said, wow, this is like, I thought it was just cable news. Maybe it was just a way to get my face on TV, but that started the relationship with the audience. So then, several years in, Greg and Dana, now they're TV stars, but I don't think either of them expected to have a career in TV, and it was the same with me.